The moment my son saw the empty refrigerator, he stopped breathing. Not because there was nothing inside, because there was a 4-digit lock on the door. He looked at me, then at the bowl of thin chicken soup sitting in front of me, then back at the refrigerator. "Dad," he whispered. His voice broke before he could finish. I had waited 5 months for that moment. But when it finally came, I didn't feel victorious. I felt like a father who had just watched his son discover how badly he had failed him. Before we continue, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your city, your country. I want to know how far this story travels. My name is Walter Harlan. I was 61 years old, retired after decades working inside courtrooms, and I had spent most of my life believing that lies were easiest to recognize when someone was nervous. I was wrong. The most dangerous liars are calm. They smile. They bring you tea. They tell your son they love you. And they make you look unstable when you finally try to tell the truth. After my wife, Margaret, died, my son Ethan became the center of my world. He was 36, brilliant, hardworking, and the kind of man who still called his father before making an important decision. Then he married Claire. At first, I welcomed her. I really did. She was charming, polished, always perfectly dressed. And when Ethan left for a major case in California, he told me something that made me feel safe. "Dad, Claire will take care of everything." He trusted her completely. Every month, Ethan sent her $8,500 for my living expenses. Food, medicine, household bills, everything I needed. Except I never received any of it. Not $1. 3 weeks after Ethan left, Claire placed a keypad lock on the refrigerator. When I asked why, she smiled. "Food deliveries have been getting mixed up." I knew that wasn't true, but I said nothing. When I asked her for money to buy groceries, she didn't even look embarrassed. She simply said, "Walter, you have a roof over your head. Stop acting helpless." That sentence stayed with me. Because she wasn't angry. She was confident. She believed I had nowhere to go. So twice a week, I walked to Grace Fellowship Pantry and stood in line with people who had lost jobs, homes, marriages, sometimes everything. The first day, I couldn't look anyone in the eye. By the 5th month, I stopped feeling ashamed. I started paying attention. I kept a small notebook. Dates, receipts, conversations, things Claire thought I had forgotten. And then one Tuesday morning, something changed. I heard the front door open. Not Claire's key. Not the familiar sound of her heels. A heavier step. A leather bag dropped onto the floor. Then silence. I turned around. Ethan was standing in the kitchen. His eyes moved from my face, to the soup, to the refrigerator lock. His expression changed. "Dad," he said quietly, "why are you eating food from a charity pantry?" I looked at my son, and for the first time in 5 months, I knew the truth was finally going to come out. But what I didn't know was that Claire was already standing behind him, and she had heard every word. Claire stood behind Ethan with one hand resting lightly against the kitchen doorway. She wasn't crying. Not yet. She was watching. That was what frightened me most. Ethan turned around. "Claire?" She looked at him with wide eyes. Then she looked at me. Then at the bowl. "I was going to tell you," she whispered. Ethan's face tightened. "Tell me what?" Claire stepped into the kitchen slowly, as if she were walking into a hospital room. "I've been trying to protect your father." Those words hit me harder than an accusation would have. "Protect me." She said them so softly that Ethan immediately lowered his guard. That was Claire's gift. She never attacked first. She made people feel guilty for defending themselves. Ethan walked toward her. "What happened here?" Claire looked at me. For 1 second, our eyes met, and I saw it. The calculation. She was deciding which version of the story would hurt me the most. Then she whispered, "Your father's been changing." Ethan froze. "What do you mean?" Claire swallowed. "He forgets things." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because I understood exactly what she was doing. "He accused me of stealing from him last month," she continued. "He told me I was hiding his food. He said someone was poisoning him." Ethan slowly turned toward me. I remained seated. My hands were folded on the table. "Is that true, Dad?" I looked at my son. I asked her why the refrigerator was locked. Claire immediately interrupted. "See." She shook her head sadly. "He doesn't remember." Ethan's expression changed. Not completely. Just enough. Doubt entered the room. And once doubt enters a family, it doesn't need much room to grow. Claire sat beside Ethan. She placed her hand over his. "I didn't want to tell you while you were handling that case." Her voice trembled. You were already under so much pressure. Ethan looked exhausted. I sent you money every month, he said. Claire's eyes filled with tears. I know. Then why is Dad eating from a pantry? She lowered her head. I was using the money for his medical expenses. I looked at her. That was the first lie she told that I could prove. But I said nothing. Not yet. Ethan looked at me again. Dad, have you been seeing a doctor? No. Claire immediately whispered. He refused. That one was almost clever, because it contained just enough truth to sound believable. I had refused to see the doctor she recommended. But I refused because the doctor was her friend, and because 2 days before that appointment, I had discovered something disturbing. The doctor had already received my medical records. Without my permission. I hadn't told Ethan. Not yet. Instead, I asked quietly, Claire, where is the money Ethan sends? Her face became perfectly still. Then she smiled sadly. Dad, you're proving exactly what I'm talking about. Ethan stood between us. Enough. His voice was gentle, but firm. He looked at me. I love you. I nodded. I know, but I need you to be honest with me. That sentence hurt more than anything Claire had said, because my son wasn't calling me a liar. He was asking me to prove that I wasn't. And I knew exactly what Claire wanted next. She wanted me angry. She wanted me shouting. She wanted me to lose control in front of Ethan. So I did something she wasn't expecting. I lowered my eyes. And I said, maybe you're right, son. Claire's shoulders relaxed. Just slightly. But I noticed. Then I looked at Ethan and added, maybe I really am forgetting things. He stepped closer. Dad. I reached for his hand. I just need some time. Ethan squeezed my fingers. And Claire watched us. She thought she had won. She didn't know that underneath the table, my right hand was resting on something I had kept hidden for weeks. A small notebook. Every payment. Every date. Every grocery receipt. Every suspicious conversation. And on the final page was one sentence I had written that morning. If Ethan comes home, don't tell him everything. Because I had discovered something even worse than the missing money. Claire wasn't trying to take care of me. She was preparing to take everything I owned. And the next morning, she was going to make her first move. The next morning, Claire did something I had been waiting for. She handed me a folder. Not groceries. Not medicine. A folder. She placed it on the kitchen table and said, Ethan wants you evaluated. I looked at the papers inside. A medical appointment. A cognitive assessment. And a form authorizing someone else to manage my financial affairs if a doctor determined I was incapable of doing so. I looked up at her. Who prepared this? She smiled. I'm only trying to help. That was when I understood. Claire wasn't improvising anymore. She had a plan. And if that plan worked, my son wouldn't need to believe I was lying. A doctor would do the lying for him. I closed the folder. I'll think about it. Her smile disappeared for half a second. Then returned. Of course. She picked up her purse and walked away. I waited until I heard the front door close. Then I opened my notebook. Underneath yesterday's entry, I wrote 4 words. She is moving faster. I had been watching Claire for months. Every time Ethan called, she positioned herself beside me. Every photograph she sent him showed a clean house, a warm meal, a smiling father. But there was always something missing. The refrigerator never appeared in those photographs. Neither did my pantry bags. Neither did the receipts. And Claire had made one mistake. She assumed I was too embarrassed to keep records. She was wrong. I had kept everything. Bank statements, text messages, delivery receipts, even the dates when Ethan's monthly transfers arrived. That afternoon, I walked to Grace Fellowship Pantry. The wind was sharp, but I barely noticed it. A volunteer named Harlan recognized me immediately. You look worried today, Walter. I am. He handed me a bag. I took it and lowered my voice. Harlan, if someone ever asks whether I've been coming here. He looked at me carefully. What should I say? The truth. He nodded. Always. I almost smiled. That single word meant more to me than he knew. When I returned home, Claire was sitting in the living room, waiting. Beside her was a man I had never seen before. He introduced himself as Dr. Samuel Reeves. Claire said he was a specialist. I didn't shake his hand. Instead, I asked, how did you get my medical records? His expression changed. Just slightly. Claire answered for him. I gave him permission. I looked at her. You're not my healthcare representative. Her face hardened. Then she smiled again. You see? She turned toward Samuel. He gets confused about these things. I watched the doctor's eyes. He wasn't confused. He was uncomfortable. That was interesting. Very interesting. I sat down. Dr. Reeves began asking questions. What day was it? What year? Who was the president? Where had I eaten breakfast? Simple questions. Then came the one Claire was waiting for. Walter, he said, do you believe someone in this house is trying to harm you? I looked directly at Claire. Her eyes were fixed on me. Waiting. Hoping. I took a slow breath. Then I smiled. No. Claire's shoulders dropped. But I wasn't finished. I believe someone in this house is trying to make me look like I believe that. Silence. Dr. Reeves stopped writing. Claire's face went pale. And for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Not much. Just enough. She stood abruptly. This isn't productive. Dr. Reeves closed his folder. I agree. After he left, Claire didn't speak to me. She walked upstairs. 10 minutes later, I heard her bedroom door close. Then her voice. Low. Urgent. She was on the phone. I couldn't hear every word. But I heard one sentence clearly. Ethan doesn't know about the property yet. I froze. Property? I had never told Claire about any property. At least, not one worth mentioning. I quietly opened my notebook again. And underneath everything I had already written, I added one more line. Find out what she thinks I own. Because if Claire was searching for something, I intended to let her find it. But I had no idea that the thing I was about to show her would become the trap she could not escape. That night, I heard Claire whisper a name I hadn't heard in years. Marcus. I stopped outside her bedroom. The hallway was dark. Her door was almost closed, but not completely. I could hear her speaking softly on the phone. I don't care what the paperwork says, she whispered. If Walter is declared incompetent, Ethan can control everything. My stomach tightened. Then she said something that made me step backward. Especially the old industrial building. I stood completely still. So that was it. Claire wasn't only trying to control my money. She believed I owned something valuable. And she was willing to destroy my reputation to get it. I returned to my room before she could hear me. For several minutes, I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the floor. The building she mentioned had belonged to my father. It had been sitting empty for years. But there was something Claire didn't know. The building wasn't valuable because of what was inside it. It was valuable because of what was buried beneath it. Years earlier, my father had purchased an old manufacturing property outside the city. The business eventually collapsed. The building became useless. Everyone assumed it was worthless. Everyone except me. I had recently discovered that the property carried a massive environmental liability from the company's old operations. Cleaning it up would cost far more than the land was worth. I had never told Ethan, and certainly never told Claire. But now I understood something. She had found the property, and somehow she believed it was worth a fortune. The next morning, I made a decision. I would give her exactly what she wanted, just not in the way she expected. At breakfast, Claire walked into the kitchen wearing a pale blue dress. Her voice was unusually gentle. Did you sleep well? Yes. She poured herself coffee. Then she casually asked, Walter, do you remember that property your father owned? I looked confused. Which property? The old industrial one. I stared at her. She waited. I deliberately frowned. I think there was something like that. Her fingers tightened around the coffee mug. Do you know where the paperwork is? I don't remember. She smiled. That's okay. But her eyes told me something different. She was excited. I could see it. So I gave her another piece. I think it's somewhere in my study. She nearly stopped breathing. Really? Maybe. I shrugged. I haven't looked at those files in years. Claire stood immediately. I can help you. I looked at her. No. Her smile disappeared. I mean, you shouldn't be going through old paperwork alone, she said. I'll manage. She nodded. But she wasn't disappointed. She was already thinking. That afternoon, I left the house. I drove to my old attorney's office and met Daniel Mercer, a man I had trusted for more than 20 years. I placed a folder on his desk. I need a deed prepared. Daniel looked at me. For what? The industrial property. His expression changed. You're transferring it? I nodded. But not to Claire. Daniel leaned forward. Then who? I looked him directly in the eye. That's the part she must never know. He understood immediately. We spent the next 2 hours reviewing everything. The transfer had to be completely legal. No hidden clauses. No fake signatures. No trick that could be challenged later. Claire had to choose it herself. That was the important part. I wasn't going to force her. I was going to give her enough information to make her greedy. When I returned home, Claire was waiting. She smiled. "Did you find the paperwork?" I sighed. "I think so." She stepped closer. "And?" I lowered my voice. "I may have remembered something." "What?" I looked around the room, then leaned toward her. There could be a buyer interested in that property. Her eyes widened. "How much?" I pretended to struggle with the number. "Maybe $800,000. Claire went completely silent. I could almost hear the calculation happening inside her head. Then she touched my shoulder. "Walter, maybe I should help you handle this." I smiled weakly. "Maybe." She kissed my cheek, then walked away. The moment she disappeared around the corner, my expression changed. Because I knew exactly what she was going to do next. She was going to search for that deed, and I had already arranged for her to find it. But there was one thing Claire didn't know. The moment she signed the transfer, she would also be signing herself into a debt she could never escape. 2 days later, Claire placed a document in front of me. She didn't ask me to sign it immediately. That would have made her too obvious. Instead, she brought me coffee and sat across from me with the patient expression of someone pretending to help an old man. "Walter," she said gently, "I spoke with someone about the property." I looked at her. "Who?" "A real estate consultant." That was a lie. I already knew she had spoken to someone else. Someone who understood exactly how to move property from one person's name to another. Claire slid the document across the table. "They believe the building could be worth significantly more than we thought." I looked down. It was a preliminary transfer agreement. My hands remained still. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because Ethan is away, and you shouldn't have to handle complicated paperwork alone." I almost smiled. That sentence sounded caring. But underneath it was something much colder. She wanted my signature. I looked at the bottom of the page. There was a blank line. "Waiting. Who becomes the owner?" I asked. Claire hesitated. Then she smiled. "A company." "What company?" "It's just temporary." I leaned back. "My name disappears?" "Only on paper." That was the moment I knew she believed I was trapped. She believed I was confused. She believed she could make me sign anything if she used the right tone. So I looked at the document again. Then I asked the question she desperately wanted to hear. "What happens if I refuse?" Her expression changed. "Not much, but enough." "You don't understand, Walter." Her voice became colder. "If you don't cooperate, Ethan may have to make these decisions for you." I lowered my eyes, pretending to be hurt. "You think I'm incapable?" "I think you're not well." There it was. The sentence she needed. The foundation for everything. I slowly picked up the pen. Claire leaned forward. Her breathing became almost imperceptibly faster. I signed. She stared at my signature, then immediately took the papers. She didn't even bother pretending to comfort me. "Thank you," she whispered. I watched her walk upstairs. 3 minutes later, she was on the phone. "It's done," she said. I couldn't hear the person on the other end. But Claire's voice was suddenly bright. "Tonight." I sat perfectly still. Because the real document was not the one she had taken upstairs. That one had been prepared to reveal exactly how far she was willing to go. The actual transfer documents had already been prepared with my attorney. And they contained the information Claire hadn't bothered to investigate. The property carried an environmental obligation from its previous industrial use. A very expensive one. But Claire didn't know that. She only saw an abandoned building, a possible fortune, and an elderly man she thought couldn't remember what he owned. That evening Ethan called. I answered. "Dad, how are you?" "I'm fine." There was silence. Then he asked, "Are you sure?" I knew what he meant. Claire had been talking to him. "She says you're getting worse." My chest tightened. For a moment, I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to say, "Your wife is stealing from you." I wanted to say, "She locked my food away." I wanted to say, "She is trying to make you believe I'm losing my mind." But I remembered something my wife used to tell me. When people are determined to misunderstand you, don't waste your strength shouting. So I said only, "Son, I need you to trust me for a little longer." Ethan's voice became quiet. "I want to." Those 3 words broke something inside me. Not because he didn't trust me. Because he wanted to. But he was still fighting against everything Claire had planted in his mind. That night, I placed my notebook beside my bed. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "The paperwork is ready." I stared at the screen. Then another message appeared. "But Walter, there's something you need to know." My heart stopped. I called him immediately. He answered on the first ring. "Daniel." His voice was unusually serious. Someone accessed the property records this afternoon. Claire? No. A pause. Someone using the name of the company she's preparing to create. I sat up. So she's already formed it? Yes. I looked toward the bedroom door. Then Daniel said something that changed everything. Walter, that company isn't being created just to take the property. What do you mean? His answer was almost a whisper. They've been setting it up to take your other assets too. I couldn't move. For the first time that night, I realized the property wasn't the end of Claire's plan. It was only the beginning. And now I knew exactly how much she wanted. Everything. Daniel's warning stayed in my mind all night. Claire didn't just want the property. She wanted access to everything. My house, my accounts, my investments, and eventually control over Ethan's finances too. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. For the first time in months, I wasn't afraid of what Claire might do. I was waiting for her to do it. That difference mattered. At breakfast, Claire walked in carrying a folder and wearing the same pleasant expression she used whenever Ethan was watching. I have good news, she said. I looked up. What kind of news? The buyer is interested. I pretended to struggle with the word. Buyer? She nodded. The property. I stared at her. Oh, she smiled. They're prepared to move quickly. How quickly? Very quickly. I could hear the excitement underneath her voice. Then she placed another document in front of me. This is just an authorization. It allows me to handle the remaining paperwork. I picked it up. I didn't read it. Instead, I looked at her. Why do you need authority? Because you told me you don't understand these things anymore. I felt something inside me break. Not anger. Something sadder. She had taken my moments of weakness and turned them into evidence against me. I lowered my eyes. Maybe you're right. Claire relaxed. That was exactly what she wanted to hear. I'll sign it. She pushed the pen toward me. My fingers wrapped around it. Then I stopped. Claire? Yes. If something happens to me. She leaned forward. What? Promise me you'll take care of Ethan. Her expression softened. Of course. I signed. She took the paper immediately. And smiled. But she didn't notice the tiny camera hidden across the room. She didn't know Ethan had arranged it. And she certainly didn't know that every word she'd spoken was being preserved. That evening Ethan called me. Dad, I'm coming home tomorrow. My heart tightened. Tomorrow? Yes. There was something different in his voice. Not suspicion. Determination. I need to talk to you. About what? A long silence. Everything. I closed my eyes. He had finally started asking questions. But I didn't know whether Claire had already realized it. The following afternoon, Ethan walked through the front door. Claire wasn't home. He found me in the study. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he noticed the notebook on my desk. What is that? I handed it to him. He opened it. The first page contained dates. The second contained bank transfers. The third contained grocery receipts. Then photographs. Messages. Names. Amounts. His face slowly changed. Dad. I said nothing. He turned another page. His hands began trembling. She told me you were refusing food. I nodded. She told me you were imagining the refrigerator lock. I nodded again. She told me you accused her of stealing. I did. Ethan looked confused. Because she was. He closed his eyes. A tear slipped down his cheek. I should have listened. I stood and walked toward him. You're here now. He looked at me. I left you alone. You didn't know. I should have known. I placed my hands on his shoulders. Your mother used to say something. He waited. Guilt is only useful if you turn it into courage. He wiped his face. Then opened the notebook again. His expression hardened. What does she want with the property? I told him. He stared at me for several seconds. Then he asked, Do you know what she's planning next? Before I could answer, his phone buzzed. A message from Claire. We need to celebrate tonight. I have wonderful news about your father's property. Ethan slowly looked at me. Neither of us spoke. Then another message appeared. This one was from Daniel. The company was registered this morning. Ethan read it. His jaw tightened. Dad. I looked at him. He turned the phone toward me. The company's registered owners were listed. And one of the names made my blood run cold. It wasn't Claire's. It wasn't Ethan's. It was someone I had never met. Someone who had already been watching my family for months. And suddenly I understood. Claire wasn't working alone. There was another person behind the entire plan. I thought Claire was the danger. I was wrong. The name on that company record belonged to Victor Hale, a private financial consultant who had worked with Claire before Ethan ever met her. Daniel had discovered the connection. Victor had been involved in 3 other property transfers. In every case, an elderly owner had been declared mentally incapable. In every case, a family member suddenly gained control. And in every case, Victor disappeared once the assets changed hands. Ethan stared at the screen. She found him how? I don't know, I said. Daniel answered before Ethan could. Actually, I do. He turned his laptop toward us. There were emails. Claire had contacted Victor 6 weeks earlier. The first message was simple. I may have access to a valuable property. I need someone who understands elder asset transfers. The second message was worse. The owner is beginning to lose his memory. Ethan's face went white. That was my father. I looked away. I couldn't bear seeing the pain in his eyes. Then Daniel showed us another document. A draft petition. It requested legal authority over my financial affairs. The petitioner? Claire. The supporting medical statement? Dr. Samuel Reeves. And the proposed financial manager? Victor Hale. Ethan slammed his hand against the desk. She planned everything. Yes, Daniel said. But she made one mistake. Ethan looked up. What? Daniel pointed to the final page. She put too much in writing. That sentence changed the room. For months, Claire had believed she was controlling the story. But now we had something stronger than accusations. We had evidence. Bank transfers. Recorded conversations. Medical authorization. The property documents. The company registration. And the surveillance footage from my house. But Ethan wanted to confront her immediately. I want to call the police. I stopped him. Not yet. His eyes filled with anger. She tried to steal everything you own. I know. She tried to convince me you're mentally ill. I know. She made you eat charity food while spending my money. My throat tightened. I know. He looked at me. Then why are you still protecting her? That question hurt. Because there was no easy answer. I wasn't protecting Claire. I was protecting Ethan from making a decision while he was furious. Your mother taught me something, I said. When you're angry, don't make the final move. Ethan sat down. His breathing slowly calmed. Then Daniel spoke. If she believes the property is still available, she'll move. Ethan understood immediately. You want her to keep going? I nodded. She thinks I'm confused. I looked at the documents. Let her believe it. That evening, Claire came home. She walked into the kitchen smiling. Ethan! She rushed toward him and wrapped her arms around his neck. He hugged her. And I watched my son perform the hardest role of his life. A husband pretending he still trusted the woman who had betrayed him. Claire pulled away. I have incredible news. Ethan smiled. What kind of news? The property deal. She looked at me. Your father finally signed the authorization. Ethan turned toward me. Really? I nodded. Yes. Claire smiled wider. She had no idea what was coming. Then she opened her purse and placed a champagne bottle on the counter. We should celebrate. Ethan looked at the bottle, then at her. Absolutely. For the first time that evening, I saw genuine confidence return to Claire's face. She believed she had won. She didn't know that Daniel had already scheduled the final meeting. And she didn't know Ethan had invited every person whose name appeared in her documents. The lawyer, the doctor, the financial consultant, even the notary. They would all be in the same room. And there would be cameras. Claire raised her glass. To family. I looked directly into her eyes. To family, I repeated. She smiled. But I knew something she didn't. The next night, she wouldn't be celebrating. She would be explaining. And once the first video appeared on the screen, there would be nowhere left for her to hide. The room was full before Claire realized she had walked into a trap. She had invited people expecting congratulations. Instead, she found Ethan standing beside me. Daniel was near the wall. Dr. Reeves sat silently across the room, and the notary who had witnessed the property documents was sitting beside him. Claire stopped. What is this? Ethan looked at her. We need to talk. She smiled nervously. About what? Nobody answered. Then the television behind us turned on. The first recording appeared. Claire's own voice filled the room. I don't care what Walter thinks. If he's declared incompetent, Ethan can control everything. Her face went completely still. The video continued. Then came another recording. Her voice again. I'll handle the property before Ethan gets suspicious. Claire looked at Ethan. That was taken out of context. He didn't respond. Another recording played. Claire telling Dr. Reeves that I was confused. Then another. Her discussing the company. Then another. Her explaining how the property could be transferred. One by one, her excuses disappeared. She finally turned toward Victor. Say something. Victor didn't move. Claire's voice became desperate. Victor? He looked down at the table. I never agreed to be involved in fraud. Claire stared at him. You told me you could handle it. I told you I could advise you. You created the company. I created the structure you requested. Ethan stepped forward. Using my father's name? Victor said nothing. Claire's eyes moved around the room. She was searching for an ally. There wasn't one. Then she looked at me. You planned this? I nodded. Yes. Her face twisted with disbelief. How? I walked slowly toward her. Because you made one mistake. What mistake? You believed my silence meant weakness. The room became completely quiet. I looked at the refrigerator. The same man who couldn't afford groceries somehow managed to keep every receipt. Claire's eyes filled with tears. But this time, nobody rushed to comfort her. Ethan stepped beside me. Dad, I'm sorry. I looked at him. You came home. He shook his head. I should have come sooner. I placed my hand on his shoulder. You came when it mattered. Claire began crying. I loved you, Ethan. He looked at her for a long moment. I believe you thought you did. She reached toward him. He stepped back. That hurt her more than shouting ever could. Daniel placed an envelope on the table. Claire, these are the legal notices. She opened it with trembling hands. The property transfer had been stopped. The financial authorization was revoked. And Ethan had filed for divorce. She stared at the papers. You're throwing me out? Ethan answered quietly. No. He looked toward me. You threw yourself out the moment you decided my father was worth less than his money. Claire lowered her head. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then she whispered, Where am I supposed to go? I almost answered. Then I remembered the months I had spent standing in a food pantry line. I remembered the locked refrigerator, the empty table, the photographs she had staged for my son, and the way she had made me question my own dignity. So I simply said, That isn't my decision anymore. 3 weeks later, I drove past Grace Fellowship Pantry. There was a long line outside, people standing in the cold, waiting patiently for food. I parked. I walked inside. Marlon saw me and smiled. You're back. I nodded. But not for food. I placed a check on the table. Enough to fund the pantry for an entire year. Marlon stared at it. Walter. I shook my head. Just make sure nobody leaves hungry. That evening, Ethan came over. We sat at my kitchen table. The refrigerator door was open. No lock. Shelves full. He looked inside and laughed quietly. Feels different. I smiled. Yes. He looked at me. Are you happy? I thought about that question. For months, I had believed revenge would make me happy. It didn't. Justice had given me something better. Peace. I reached across the table and squeezed my son's hand. I don't need you to protect me anymore. Ethan's eyes became wet. I know. Then he smiled. But I'm still going to come by every Sunday. I laughed. Your mother would approve. Outside, the evening light faded across the windows. And for the first time in months, my house felt like a home again. I learned something during those terrible months. Sometimes the strongest person in the room isn't the one shouting. It is the person who can sit quietly, watch everything, and wait for the truth to catch up. Because lies can move quickly. They can manipulate people. They can even turn a family against itself. But eventually, every lie needs somewhere to stand. And when the evidence is finally placed in front of it, it has nowhere left to hide. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones we trusted without question. But betrayal does not mean you have to lose your dignity, and justice does not always require anger or revenge. Sometimes the strongest response is to stay calm, protect the truth, and let someone's own actions reveal who they really are. Walter learned that silence is not weakness, patience is not surrender, and when the truth is supported by evidence, even the most carefully constructed lie eventually falls apart. Most importantly, never let someone else's greed make you believe that you are worthless. Your value is never determined by what you owned. If Walter's story touched your heart, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Hidden Legacy for more emotional family stories, shocking betrayals, and powerful lessons about life, trust, and justice. And now I want to hear from you. What would you have done if you were in Walter's position? Would you have confronted Claire immediately, told your son everything, or stayed silent and gathered the evidence first? Share your answer in the comments. Your story might help someone else going through a similar situation. And don't forget to tell us where you're watching from.